The base has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here, Black Friday edition of the show from Atlanta, Georgia. Getting ready for the Eastern Conference Finals Leg 1 on Sunday at the Benz. Jason Longshore, John Nelson here with you to start proceedings today. Jarrett Smith will be joining in after training. He is at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground alongside Felipe Cardenas and Doug Roberson, who will both be joining us later in the show for their insight about the big playoff match on Sunday. But, John, before we dig super deep into Atlanta and New York and start breaking down some of the things that will affect the result as we end the night on Sunday, the silly season and even some of the moves are starting to happen around the league beforehand, and there are a ton of things to keep everybody up to date on. Let's start with the official stuff, or at least the reported news, the stuff that would get a breaking news sounder as opposed to a fire alarm or a bomba. Nashville made an announcement. Nashville signed Daniel Rios as their first Major League Soccer player. And if you don't follow USL closely, you might say, Daniel Rios, who's that? Chivas forward, North Carolina FC loan in 2018, where he scored 20 goals in USL. He'll play in Nashville in the USL in 2019, and he is their first MLS contracted player. We had a chance to see Rios with North Carolina FC. Good young player. Very good young player. Interesting signing from Nashville for their first MLS guy.
Yeah, and knowing what we saw with him at North Carolina FC, now that this first piece is in, I want to see how he's surrounded for 2019. And obviously we'll get these pieces moving as we go, but okay, I like this piece. Now, what do you do for a follow-up? It's you sit there and it's like, all right, this one's on the shelf. He's not an elf. And those things kind of creep me out. But Daniel Rios, he's up there now. What do you do for all of the surrounding parts? Because then that, for me, gives me an idea as to what the approach will be for 19 heading into 20. So I like this.
Yeah, but
see what your follow-up is.
The 19 roster doesn't mean anything about 20, really. I mean, I think this always happens when a team is moving up. We start trying to read every possible thing into their final season at USL or previously NASL. It's a small number of players who are going to make the jump. Cincinnati might have 8 to 10. Minnesota had less than that. Others have had usually that number or less. Rios is different than your typical USL player in Nashville next year, but I don't think anyone's expecting Daniel Rios to come into MLS and score 20 goals. So
no.
It's a good first piece, but that's probably what it is. I mean, you look at Rios and project him to MLS, you're talking about a guy who's going to have to fight for playing time, or a guy who is a first option or so off the bench. That's what you're looking at. This is not a designated player signing. So
no,
it's a good signing for Nashville, but we're so far away from trying to read tea leaves about 2020. Let's not jump the gun just yet. You've got guys who are looking to be the Forrest Lassos and Corbin Bones, and guys who are possible starters or possible depth pieces to make that jump to MLS. That's what you're looking at with Nashville in 2019, because the guys that are going to really move the needle will be the big signings coming into MLS ahead of 2020. Real Salt Lake declined options on a couple of guys that were a little surprising. The biggest one to me was Luis Silva, forward, who I think is a guy who can play significant minutes in MLS. Two others to keep an eye on. Luke Mulholland, who battled injuries all year, came back to play significant minutes at the end of the season and in the postseason. And right back Tony Beltran, who was part of the U.S. men's national team before injuries ruled him out, and Brooks Lennon became a right back and took his spot. For those who were wondering, Nick Raimondo and Kyle Beckerman are under contract for 2019, although it's not 100% that they're coming back and not retiring. So keep an eye on RSL, but they declined quite a few options. They still have their core, and they had a lot of guys already signed through 2019, but they declined, I think it was 7 or 8 different options, and these 3 are guys who have been very significant guys who played a good bit for RSL. Sonny is another one which we knew about. Sonny had already
Yes.
talked about it, so another one to add to the list. RSL will be looking a little different in 2019.
Yeah, that was the phraseology I was going to use with these options that have been declined, knowing what you may have at the back with Raimondo and Beckerman being under contract and Brooks Lennon and all those pieces. You sit there and you're just like, okay, yeah, things will be a little different. So once again, with these options having been declined, I want to see what the offseason brings and who they bring in to swap out for these names that have been shipped out the door.
Another one that is being reported but won't be announced for a little while, likely. Kevin Baxter of the LA Times reports that LAFC has signed center back Eddie Segura on loan from Atletico Huila for the first 6 months of the 2019 season. Segura was the captain of that club in Colombia that finished fourth in the last league season. It's an option to buy at the end of the loan. I'm assuming that the loan for the first 6 months is probably due to moving money around, moving allocation money around to be able to make it work instead of just buying him outright first. He had previously been linked to Minnesota, but young center back, Colombian center back, headed to LAFC, and that is a piece that they really needed to address after Laurent Simon and his departure. So smart move by LAFC here.
Yeah, I was when you're going through all of this and it's like center back, that's when the bells and the sirens went off for me. And you're going, okay, there you go. And it was one of those glaring gaps that LAFC had, and to bring in someone like a Segura, I want to see how he integrates with life in MLS. Obviously, we know what he can do on the pitch, but I want to see how he's put into things by Bob Bradley, if I could get my upper plate to work here on Black Friday. But I want to see how he's plugged in, and I want to see what kind of an MLS player Eddie Segura is, knowing what he's done at Huila.
All right, now let's get into rumors. And there are 3 different clubs and their managerial spots that are being discussed in the rumor mill. First one, LA Galaxy. Been wondering about Greg Berhalter and what's up with Greg Berhalter. Grant Wall tweeted that a club rep told him that the club has not made an offer to any coaching candidate yet, and Berhalter is part of that group. So there'd been some reports about the Galaxy making offers to Berhalter. There's been some reports from some of our friends north of the border that maybe the Berhalter to the U.S. job is not necessarily secure, that it could be the Galaxy that makes more sense for him. It could be the landing spot. Grant Wall saying that no offers on the table as of yet. Looks like there are offers on the table, though, for 2 guys to make a return in 2019. Dome Tarrant in NYC is not exactly a surprise, although the poor finish did raise some questions about it for sure. He's already under contract through 2020, so it sounds like he's just going to come back and get the full preseason to build the team the way he wants. The big questions for him are about David Villa and Yangel Herrera, and are they back? Are they not back? What's the deal? New York City's already been linked to a couple different guys, and one of them, Sergio Leon, is a 29-year-old forward at Real Betis. He could be the replacement for Villa if Villa doesn't come back. There had been some talk that the club had only offered Villa a front office job. We'll see. I think they have until Monday to issue updates on options being picked up, contracts, what have you. Herrera was on loan for 2 years when he was signed. He's a Manchester City contracted player. Is he going to go to Manchester? Is he going to go on loan somewhere else? Is he going to come back on loan to New York City? Those are the questions for him as he returned from injury late in the year. The more surprising one is Chicago. The Athletic reporting that Veljko Paunovic is closing in on a multi-year deal to stay in Chicago as the manager. Nelson Rodriguez, Bastian Schweinsteiger are also likely to return if all this goes down. I'm a little surprised, to be honest, because I don't know where the progress is, and I don't know how everybody comes back after the last couple of years. That's the thing to me. I guess if you wanted to say that Paunovic hasn't had the talent to be able to do what he needs to do, Well, then you have to look at the GM. Well, the GM is the president in Nelson Rodriguez, and he has taken the blame for not providing some of that talent, not getting deals done. But it looks like it's going to be same as it ever was. I don't know if that's the right approach in Chicago. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, and I would have, if you had told me Paunovic got a 1 year, and then you got to look at things, I would have said, okay, Paunovic gets a year to try to right the ship with Nelson Rodriguez. I get that. I'm cool with that in the sense of I understand the rationale. But a multi-year deal, that is where you scratch your head and you're going, okay, this is a team that has floundered at the box office, floundered on the pitch, and you want to give this duo more years than they probably should. And I get it from a managerial perspective. You want to sit there and say, well, no, I don't want 1 year. I want more because I think A, B, C, D, and E have to happen. I get the idea. If I'm the guy trying to negotiate my contract, I'm going to sit there and say, well, I need more years than just one because one shows you don't have any faith in me, so why should I have any faith in you? I get that as a negotiating tactic. But what we've seen in Chicago and what you've seen in person in Bridgeview, to me, does not sit there and equal a multi-year deal. Paunovic, Rodriguez, Schweinsteiger, all probably coming back, likely to return and whatever. But for me, it's not a jaw dropper, but it's a head scratcher. And if it was me, I would have given Jim Curtin the multi-year deal and Paunovic the one because of what we've seen with what they've been dealing with on the pitch. This one, to me, is a complete and total head scratcher.
Based off what they've done, yeah, I would agree. But the situations are different. You have a new sporting director in Philadelphia who
and I get
would
that.
likely want to go in his own direction, but shouldn't yet because Jim Curtin did a good job. So you want to see, okay, can we work together? Are we on the same page? Is he going to do what I want to see out of the team now that it's my team and not Ernie Stewart's team? So I get it. This one is the more surprising one to me because I just don't think you get better unless you make some of the signings that haven't happened. But the problem is the reports right now are, again, same as it ever was. According to reports out of Portugal, Iker Casillas turned down a deal from Chicago now, like not over the summer, turned down another offer from Chicago. It was a max TAM deal of $1.5 million per year, so it's not a crazy contract, but he said no. So now they're chasing 36-year-old Portugal national team backup goalkeeper Beto, who's playing in Turkey. He wants more than $1.5 million a year. The Casillas one, $1.5 million per year for him. That's not crazy money. That's not a crazy offer. I think you could use that TAM in a better way, but okay, if you're looking at this, that man, we've got to sign a name because nobody cares about our product right now in Chicago. Okay, I can go down that path with you, but more money or the same offer to a Portugal national team backup that nobody would really know when you could go get somebody else for half that, a quarter of that in the league and get as good or better performance. That's the part you can't
fix
really
your other
justify.
issues.
Yeah. Well, exactly. But that's the part you can't justify. Casillas for that kind of money is a different conversation completely.
Yeah,
because of the name value. And that's a better type of offer than I would have expected they would have thrown at Casillas. So that part's fine. The problem is if you're going after Beto, I mean, come on. It doesn't make sense for that type of money. So
no.
If you're going to bring Paunovic, Rodriguez, Schweinsteiger back and change your approach and go get some players that fit MLS 3.0 2019, fine. But the problem is the rumors alongside of these rumors, it's business as usual, and that just is not going to work. Not in the Eastern Conference, not with a Cincinnati coming in that's ambitious, not with everything else that is happening in the Eastern Conference. I just don't see how Chicago gets dramatically better if they continue down the path that they've been on. I just don't see it.
No.
Lots of player rumors, lots of talk there. We'll get into that as we go this morning. We'll get into Atlanta, New York Red Bulls preview as well. Felipe Cardenas will be our first guest at 10:30-ish. Tata Martino, I believe, is still speaking to the media at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground, so Felipe might get pushed back just a bit. Jarrett Smith will be joining us as well here shortly, and Doug Roberson will be joining at 11:30 for our predictions. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us on a Black Friday after Thanksgiving. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, November 23rd edition of the show. Jarrett Smith is now with us. Training is over. Media availability is over. So we'll be talking to Jarrett about everything going down as well. Jarrett, Veljko Paunovic might be back in Chicago.
The national nightmare.
Yeah, pretty much. Not really a shock there. But I've got one for you, Jarrett. This is a special rumor just for you.
Hell yeah, let's go.
The Scottish Sun is reporting that 33-year-old Celtic captain Scott Brown is drawing interest from Sporting Kansas City and Minnesota United. Is that a good laugh? I don't even know.
I love Scott Brown. Scott Brown is you ever played with a player who likes to tackle people really hard, like red card quality tackles, and then if he gets tackled, he gets up and starts asking for more and starts kind of feeding off of it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Scott Brown. You can spike Scott Brown in the thigh and like kick him, and as he gets up, he'll be raising his hands, screaming for more, saying, "Give me what else you got. Come on, show me what you can do."
Huh. It's an interesting two teams that are linked to him because they're two very different kinds of teams. I mean, I guess Kansas City is trying to open a Scottish pipeline now.
There you go.
And
if they really want to do that, they should find a way to sign Kieran Tierney from Celtic, who's one of the better left backs on the islands.
Oh, maybe. Minnesota and Scott Brown seems like an odd choice for a 33-year-old coming to the United States for the first time.
Yeah, Scott Brown has been really good in his career. That career is really waning, and he's when he's on, he's a really good, central midfielder, can sit back a bit, played in a 4-2-3-1 for a bit in whatever the hell Brendan Rodgers was doing, day to day, week to week, hour to hour up in Glasgow. But I don't know how much he's got left in the tank. Shout out to MLS for I'm sorry, not MLS, but Minnesota and Sporting Kansas City for saying, hey, maybe we'll kick the tires on the old man, but just retired from international play, so you wouldn't lose him to international duty. I guess that's a plus, but and I love Scott Brown. I think he can do better. I don't know how he would do with the pace in this league. He's always had pace, but I don't know how he would do over the long haul in this league.
Right, and that's what I'm looking at, because I think if he went to Kansas City, he wouldn't be playing 34 games a year and tons of minutes. I think he'd be cover to a degree for Ilie or be, a second defensive midfielder with Ilie. Minnesota, he would have to come in and play a lot, and that might be asking a lot of a 33-year-old who's struggling for pace, but that seems like the kind of signing that Minnesota might make, so we'll see. Stay tuned.
I'd be excited just to watch
Brown
Scott
rumors.
Brown. I would be excited to watch Scott Brown just come into MLS and see how. And put it this way: if Scott Brown wants to, they can dedicate an instant replay segment to him every week.
Well, a guy that he might be in instant replay segments with, Osvaldo Alonso, is reportedly drawing free agent interest from a couple of teams. Cincinnati, which makes a lot of sense to bring in a veteran to hold down that midfield. The other is our friends in Orlando. Could you imagine Osvaldo Alonso and Will Johnson in the same team?
Oh, my God.
Do they have the money for that?
I don't know.
That would be A, B, and C for me.
Yeah, those rumors are coming from Nico Moreno in Seattle, who covers the Sounders for local Spanish-language media and footballmls.com. So stay tuned on Osvaldo Alonso, where he might end up around the league. Some other guys who have been... Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, you get a veteran in there. A couple other guys who've been linked to the league to just remember these names. Some of them you know, some of them you don't know. Marco Fabian from Mexico with Eintracht Frankfurt. He is reportedly interested in hearing offers from MLS over the summer. 29 years old. It's kind of at that right time. He will be leaving Frankfurt at the end of the season. So he has expressed some interest in MLS. Had some injury problems. Reportedly enjoys the nightlife. So keep those.
Does he like to boogie?
I don't know about his boogieing. Thanks for the ridiculously old reference. I like it.
Does he like the disco? Oh, yeah?
No, I don't think he likes the disco. I don't think he likes the disco at all. I don't think anybody likes the disco anymore.
No.
Other players to keep an eye on. Brian Angulo is a 22-year-old striker from Ecuador. Reportedly, his club Emelec turned down a $7.5 million offer from an MLS club over the summer. They will be fielding transfer offers in the upcoming window. The reason why a $7.5 million offer came through over the summer, Angulo scored 27 goals this season for Emelec in the Ecuadorian First Division. So, 22-year-old striker scoring 27 goals? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on him. Another young 22-year-old, Alan Cruz, Costa Rican international. He has 2 caps with the national team. Marca is reporting 5 MLS clubs are interested in talking to Mr. Cruz. He is a central midfielder at Herediano, who will be in the CONCACAF Champions League this year. Cruz is just starting to break into the Costa Rican national team. So another young player and a very, I think, smart buy type of player. Probably won't be more than probably could do it with allocation money, not even TAM, not even targeted allocation money. So Cruz would be a smart addition. Kevin Quevedo is another link to NYCFC, young Peruvian, 21 years old. He's played with Peru's U20s. He's at Alianza Lima. He's played in the Copa Libertadores. That would be a very smart addition for NYC if they're able to pull that down. The one that surprised me the most in the rumor mill as we head to break here in just a second. Remember Juninho?
Yes.
Chicago
LAG.
Fire and LAG Juninho reportedly is in Toronto undergoing a physical and could be joining Toronto FC. He is 29 years old. Seems like he's older because he's been around for a while, but only 29. He has not played since undergoing arthroscopic surgery in November of last year. So that is something to definitely be concerned about if you're Toronto FC. Joshua Cloak of The Athletic is reporting this. The one thing that makes a lot of sense when you're looking at this is Juninho has a green card, so he would count as a domestic player. Even in Toronto, it still would count as a domestic player. That would be pretty helpful to get a guy with his experience, his quality, his pedigree, and not count as an international if he's healthy. And that's the big question. The more speculative rumor out of Toronto is, and these reports are actually coming from Mexico, Josie Altidore and Tigres. Josie Altidore could be headed to Tigres in exchange for 2 players, according to reports in Mexico. He did tweet at Andre Pierre Gignac.
Saw that.
Their forward. So maybe, I don't know. Tigres has been mentioned with Josie Altidore before. So with Josie's situation, with Toronto maybe looking to reload and change pieces around, crazier things have happened. I don't think that one's completely nuts. So stay tuned there.
I don't hate it for Toronto.
No, I don't either. I mean, depending on the players you get, but just to be able to take that next step and, do you turn the striker role over to Toussaint Ricketts? Are you getting a striker in this deal? Are you going to go get another striker, a different striker? It could be time to change up the core of this team. Josie's the youngest of the core. I think you have some serious questions about Bradley and Giovinco and their long-term in Toronto. But if Josie wants to go and you can get the right kind of deal for him, hey, take it. Makes sense. The other big one before we go to break, Maxi Urruti, looks like he might be staying in Dallas. Reports out of Argentina have him too far apart with Newell's Old Boys on a potential salary. So he has 2 years on his deal left in Dallas as well. Looks like he might be staying for whoever takes the reins in Dallas, and they could be looking at a young Venezuelan striker we've talked about before, Jefferson Sotoledo. There are reports that Dallas scouts will be watching him this weekend in South America. So we'll see how Dallas fits everything together. We'll see who they hire as a manager. There are managerial jobs open. There are players on the move. There are players being rumored. There are players being rumored to leave. All kinds of stuff as the silly season has not even officially started. But we're going to put all that to the side. We're going to take a break. We're going to get Felipe Cardenas on the line and talk about some of the things that he has learned lately regarding Atlanta and the New York Red Bulls and the U.S. men's national team coaching search. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinsky at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinsky is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath.
He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties.
He knows he's a pretty big deal. Look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug, Instagram star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. November 23rd edition. It's a Five Stripe Friday, 2 days ahead of the first leg of the Eastern Conference Finals between Atlanta United and the New York Red Bulls. Felipe Cardenas joins us now to talk about some things he learned at training today, but also some nuggets on the U.S. men's national team search, I believe. Felipe, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. Good morning.
Good morning. Before we get into Atlanta and New York, you specifically requested this time to make to drop some knowledge on us, let's say.
Well, yeah, I think, first of all, I know there's a lot of frustration with fans, supporters, media in what the U.S. men's national team process has been. And that's warranted, that's granted. I think I just want to kind of paint another picture, if you will. Like, imagine that there actually is a silver lining. And I think you need to really do a deep dive on who Ernie Stewart is and like the type of technical director that he has been, especially in his history in the Dutch First Division. So, and I have spoken to some people that are close to Ernie Stewart. And the only reason why it's not a story yet is because Ernie Stewart hasn't come out and talked about what his process is. But the sources the source that I've spoken with that is close to him knows that this is a guy that is purely process driven. And now the problem with that is that immediately you'll scream, well, what is his process? Well, we don't know that, and we may know it when he announces who the next manager is. But if you go back to his history in Holland, he is very hands-on. He is extremely hands-on to the point where he chooses the players, he chooses the technical staff, he chooses a manager that he believes will be lockstep aligned with him, and not just a manager that he will speak with every once a week, but a guy that he will have breakfast with, lunch with, dinner with, brainstorm with, scout with. And he has come out and said that that's the type of relationship he'll have with the next manager of the U.S. men's national team. So what does that mean? That, to me personally, this is just my opinion, is that it rules out a lot of managers that, like a Tata Martino. And Tata Martino may not even know this, but it rules out a guy like Peter Vermees as well. A guy that has built, you take Vermees, he's built everything, the entire identity that is Sporting Kansas City. And I would assume that he would want to come in and kind of do that with the U.S. men's national team. But that's Ernie's job. Ernie wants a manager that will follow him and have a great relationship with. That, the language thing isn't about you need to speak English. You just need to we need to have a relationship. And I think with Tata Martino, it's very similar. I think he would want more control of who the technical staff is, of how the youth academies are like what the infrastructure is of the youth academies and how that's going to be brought up. And I don't think that would just mesh with an Ernie Stewart that plans on taking full control of that and then choosing a manager that can just essentially slot into the system. The process and the system are much more important than the manager for Ernie Stewart. That is my opinion. And I think that's why we won't be surprised if it's a guy like Greg Berhalter, even though he may be considering the Galaxy job. But next to Berhalter, another guy that I think fits in is a Jesse Marsch. The type of manager that understands the system and that will have a close relationship with a general manager like Ernie Stewart. So I think that's something to consider instead of, yes, I just tweeted that Tata said that, when he was asked about how he feels about being linked to so many national team jobs, the first thing he said was, I think about the teams and the places where I haven't been wanted. And I looked at his facial expression and he wasn't joking, like we all kind of like, oh, wow. But it was a serious, type of comment where, he knows that people have essentially said no to him as well. And the U.S. men's national team is a job where he just, he was not considered. So I would say that to the fans, like, let's be angry, be frustrated, But do the research, like look at the history of what Ernie Stewart has done previously. He's been very successful as a general manager, as a technical director. I'm sorry. And hopefully that's the process that he's trying to put in place right now.
It's going to be interesting because that process sounds like it's more suited to a club team as opposed to a national team. And we'll see how Stewart makes that adjustment. Berhalter's a guy who has had a lot of control in Columbus. So, that could be one reason why you're starting to hear this Galaxy talk pop up a little bit more. If he's able to go to LA and have control where he might not have as much control under the national team program under Stewart, that would be very interesting. Totally agree with your take on Martino and why he wouldn't be considered under that, because we know from past negotiations and his experience in Argentina is firsthand with this. Tata Martino is going to want control. He's not going to take the job if he doesn't have that. And if the person making the decision on it doesn't want to give up that control, then no need to have a conversation. It's done. Marsh would be interesting. My pushback to him being a good fit would be that he started in New York working with Ali Curtis, and then he took control of Ali Curtis's job and ended up being the guy making the decisions before he left Red Bulls, and Ali Curtis was pushed out. So maybe that doesn't fit quite as well. And if it doesn't, and Berhalter goes to the Galaxy, and these are the conditions, I don't know who the fit is. Maybe it's Tab Ramos. Maybe you do go to Tab Ramos at that point. We could go for hours and hours on the national team, and let's not, so our heads don't hurt at the end of it.
Right.
There's
a game on Sunday, right?
Yes, there is a game on Sunday.
Let's
move to that. Atlanta and the Red Bulls. What'd you sense from the vibe today at training from the players and from Tata about Sunday?
I mean, they're focused. I think actually Miguel Almiron, he was not on the schedule that I had via email as being available to the media. So when he came out after Brad Guzan, I was kind of surprised. I mean, let's be honest, he looked tired. He looked like he probably just traveled 20 hours from South Africa, and he hasn't trained yet. And that was kind of some of the questions were about that. Even to Tata, like how are the players like Joseph that are coming back from international competition? Are they ready to train? And the answers were very by the book. Like they're ready. They were dedicated to their national teams for the last week, but they're ready to perform. There's confidence, I think, but I think they know that this is a team that they haven't beaten yet, and we can go into who is the favorite and whatnot, and I think those are great kind of just like tidbits and a little bit of fluff around the game. But when it was my turn to ask Tata a question, I got very tactical, and the tactic that I kind of spoke to is the type of success that the Red Bulls have had in previous matchups with Atlanta United, specifically at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where it's a stadium that just allows any team to come in and play with width. It can open up really quickly for both teams. So that's what I asked him. He opened his the scrum by talking about the intensity, that they need to match the intensity. And I asked him, we can talk about intensity all day, but they had a lot of success against Atlanta United from the flanks in the 3-1 victory that they had here in Atlanta early in the season. BWP had two great goals that came from early balls, one from Kaku on the left and the other from Murillo, the right fullback on the right side. So how do they close that down? And if that's something that they're considering, and Tata was basically yes, you nailed it. We know that the early ball is important to them, that they want to get the ball into the box. They want to feed Bradley Wright Phillips as often as possible, and that they have strong fullbacks in Kamar Lawrence and the Panamanian Murillo, who are two international players. And I think that's something to look for in this matchup, even for Atlanta. I think Atlanta, we've talked so much about the midfield and even Gressel sliding into the middle and having more of a more responsibility as a central midfielder, because that was the type of game plan with NYCFC. This game might go back to a strategic flank play type of game for both teams. Who can control the flanks? Who can close down the creative players on the ball and limit the early ball into the box, as both teams can really capitalize on those types of opportunities.
And earlier on in the week, Felipe, before the holiday, we were trying to figure out, what the formation might look like. And one of the guys that popped into my head as being really important in these two legs is a guy like Franco Escobar, because if you have the 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whatever you want to call it, and it's something like Garza, LGP, Cap, Escobar, Gressel, so Gressel can go and Escobar can be backup defensively. I think that how hot a series he had against NYCFC, I think that he's one of the guys that I'm spot shadowing immediately for this two legs against Red Bull.
No doubt. I mean, Franco Escobar has been playing very well on that right side. He's kind of owned that right back position again. He kind of lost it in the middle of the season. Some of that was just tactical and injuries and all that. But yeah, he's become very important on that right side, both defending and attacking. And this is the type of game where, agree, I've been thinking about it too. I tweeted it earlier in the week, like, if the 5-3-2 is here to stay, which we may see that. The great thing about the 5-3-2 is that it can become a 3-5-2. It can morph into a lot of different formations, and I think Atlanta feels comfortable doing that. But what it does do as well is that it allows a player like Franco Escobar to have a little bit of, he's isolated on that right side. So when you're isolated, you have both freedom to attack, but you also have a lot of defensive responsibilities. And he could be very key to that, that tactic of closing down the early ball really quickly and limiting the service to a player like Bradley Wright Phillips. And I talked to Brad Guzan about that too, that the service, it's all about service for their New York Red Bulls. They're not a team that just creates chances after chance after chance, and they're constantly attacking you. But they will take advantage of the half spaces just past midfield, and that's where they're going to look for opportunities. And so Franco Escobar, yes, I think he's going to have to be very alert and very aware, both defending and attacking. You can't get too far up the field, but you do also want to pressure a guy like Kamar Lawrence, who's going to be on his side. You want Kamar Lawrence to have to think about, well, I need to defend too. Kamar Lawrence might have at one point in the game Gressel, Villalba, and Escobar all on his side. And I think that would benefit Atlanta United if you can get a team like the Red Bulls and two of their best fullbacks on the back heel, constantly trying to backpedal instead of thinking about getting forward and sending in some good service to BWP.
And then looking at what we've seen, Felipe, from the last 2 weeks from this team, from the last two games, based on the way Atlanta handled New York City, a lot of low block, a lot of physicality, down to playoff games. Has that changed your expectations for this game?
Well, that's a great question. I think that the answer comes from, like, who are the Red Bulls now? I really do believe that they're a different team than they were with Jesse Marsch. They've taken on, like all teams do, kind of the identity of their coach. And I think with Marsch, they were a little bit more purposeful when they had the ball. They knew how to press in a way that, the press was meant it was kind of like an offensive tool. And I feel like under Armas, they've become much more defensive, and their intensity on the press is meant to just disrupt. It's not really about attacking and creating chances. If a chance comes from their press and from disrupting the other team from building, then that's great for them. But yeah, I think they have also, to your point, become a little bit more intense in that they're trying to recover and disrupt throughout the game. So you cannot deny that Atlanta United will have to still maintain a high intensity, especially in the midfield, and they're going to have to be tackling and committing the tactical foul to slow the game down. And the midfield is going to be very central to this series once again. But I don't think it will be just a copy paste of the game with NYCFC. I think NYCFC, they do create chances. They do have very creative players, several that can get on the ball in the final third and create havoc. The Red Bulls have dangerous players. Like, let's not deny that. But the way they create, the way Kaku gets on the ball is much different. Kaku can just disappear. And sometimes that's okay because they're just like, okay, we're just going to go and like hassle the other team and get the ball back and just try to get in there and score a couple garbage goals and we're through. And that can get you through in a playoff situation. So I think Atlanta will have to try to maintain, their identity and not get too sucked into that type of matchup.
Who is the key player for the Red Bulls in this first leg for you? Is it Kaku?
I think, me personally, I think Kaku needs to step up. I think he needs to be a player that for them becomes that playmaker that they thought he was going to be, the type of playmaker that has earned him a call up to the Paraguayan national team under a new manager. So when you have a new manager, he's going to bring you up and prove that you are worthy of this spot and that you're going to be our playmaker. We're talking about Juan Carlos Osorio, who, he doesn't have a set lineup ever. He doesn't, he's going to test players in and out. And I need to go back and watch Paraguay and see how he performed. But I think he is very important for them. He needs to step up. He needs to get on the ball. He played well the last time they played here in Mercedes-Benz Stadium and then has completely dropped off as far as production. My guy, who I think Atlanta has to be aware of, is Royer. I think he has scored against Atlanta United in every matchup, going back to the inaugural matchup at Bobby Dodd Stadium. He was the guy that silenced the crowd. He was the guy that essentially had the fans walking out of that stadium thinking, well, typical Atlanta team that just couldn't come up big in the right moment. And since then, Royer has been just a big pain for Atlanta United. Everything from stepping up to just bury a penalty kick. And just being a nuisance. And I asked Brad Guzan this morning about Royer. Like, yeah, you can focus all you want on BWP, but you can't forget a guy that always scores on you. And Guzan was like, yeah, I think sometimes when you have a player like BWP, you kind of focus so much on him that a player like Royer can just kind of lurk in the shadows and do a lot of damage. And Roy's a very good player and a very confident player. Let's not forget that he, in that last matchup at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, he scored a Panenka penalty kick against Guzan when the temperature of that game had hit an all-time high with VAR coming in and Joseph Martinez's goal being called off. When they got the penalty, he came in and just buried it Panenka style on Guzan. And when I asked Guzan about that, if you study the PKs and if you expect a Royer to step in and Panenka you, I don't think he liked that question, to be honest with you. Like his response to me was like, well, I haven't been really thinking about that, but I guarantee he has, because every time Royer has stepped up to take a penalty kick against Brad Guzan, he buries it.
And let me get into subtle plugs. Your article in The Athletic, and my last question, I want to get into aura a little bit. And with the interviews that you've had with the players who've been in this kind of cauldron before, what has it been like to see their aura over the last little bit, and how has it rubbed off on all the other players from the times that you've been at training?
I think it's really important. I think prior experience in big games, especially in South America, where you're playing for big titles, and every stadium is full and hostile, and the pressure that these players really are under is much more than individual. Like, if you go back to Barco's penalty in the Copa Sudamericana, he had over 100 histories and 20, I think at the time 19 international titles on his back as he was preparing to take a penalty in front of 100,000 visiting fans that just hope he failed. And he buried it. And I think if you go back and look at the piece that I wrote, the one thing that I noticed in that celebration is that he was overcome emotionally and physically after he took that penalty, because it's massive, the pressure that they're under. Miguel Almiron also, he scored in a final. He had an assist for Lanús that had an unbelievable run in the Argentine First Division in 2016, and he really came on. And so he knows how to step up in a big game. So I think it is important, because Atlanta United is, and I've always been the guy that says, no, they don't need to learn how to win. I think they know how to win. That's why this team was built and the roster was put together the way it was. It's because they brought players in that they might be young, but they have tons of experience of big games in South America. They needed to know how to win together. And I think that's what's important, because you do have like guys like Gressel that, before Atlanta United, his biggest game was against Syracuse University. And then you have a guy like Parkhurst and another like Lernowitz that have been in together over 400 plus games of MLS, and Lernowitz has won an MLS Cup. Leandro Gonzalez Pires, he battled relegation with River Plate. So they know the pressure, and I think that is important to note, that those are the things that when it's 87th minute and it's 1-1, that's when those guys, they remember they've been here before. And even though I asked Miguel today if that is important about how he played in a final, he had a goal, he had an assist, and a huge moment, if that's a factor. And he told me that he thinks about that all the time, but he thinks about that game all the time, but not in the context of we're playing the Red Bulls for the Eastern Conference Finals. But it is something that is memorable, and I guarantee as an athlete, you go back and you tell yourself, I've been here before, I've done this before.
And finally, this is something we heard this morning from Tata, talking about the relationships with the players off the field. We've seen now in a couple Players Tribune articles, and just how important is it to have that with your manager when it's allowed, to where it's beyond just getting the best out of 18 guys on a given day, but having that chemistry with them off the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, American sports, we understand that as being a player's coach, right? A coach that can connect with his players, that goes much beyond the whiteboard and the formations and the tactics. And in my piece about Tata Martino being, why hasn't he been contacted by the U.S. men's national team? His prior physio with Barcelona, Paraguay, and Argentina, who's a very close friend of his, very well respected in South America as a top physiotherapist, and really just a soccer mind, Elvio Paulo Rosso. That was why that to him is why Tata Martino's teams are so good all the time, because he connects with his players, and then they believe in his systems, they believe in his ideas, and then they execute them in a great way. And to your point, Jared, I mean, today he said that, yes, he's always been that type of coach. He's like, right away when he was asked about his relationship with the players, he said, that's me. Like, I'm a coach that is always close to my players. I want to know how they are. I do talk to them. I get close with them because I want to know mentally, if they're ready to perform and all those types of things. But he also mentioned that he's been in situations where that hasn't been the case, where the locker room hasn't allowed him, he said, to be that type of manager. And we can go, again, Jason, we can go on for days and talk about who he must be talking about. Was it Argentina? Was it Barcelona? Probably both. But he did then say that Atlanta United is one of the most special locker rooms that he's ever had because of that chemistry and the close relationships that he has with each one of his players.
And I think that side of it's going to be the key here in leg one, as Atlanta has to set the tone in the home leg. It's a different type of situation than the last series where you go on the road first, you get anything out of it, you're really putting the other team behind the eight ball. This is Atlanta's chance to take what they can get out of this series, and knowing that they have never scored at Red Bull Arena. It's a difficult place to go in and play. Red Bulls are comfortable there. You have to do what you can in the home leg, and I think those relationships that you've highlighted, along with that experience the individuals have, is going to be critical on Sunday. This is the most intense match that we've seen in Atlanta since the club started, and it's going to be a tough one on Sunday.
It will. And to your point, I mean, that's why I wrote that piece. I felt like you can only write a piece like that once or twice in a club's history. Looking back at the players that are here now and where they're coming from, and then comparing it to the type of situations that they're facing now. And Atlanta United, that's why they built the team that they have, and that's why they expected to be here in year one. Okay, so now they made it in year two. They're in the finals. And the players' experience and the players that they recruit and that they buy into and that they value, look back at their history. They're not just young players that are coming from South America. Tito Villalba was on the bench at a Club World Cup against Real Madrid. He was in the 18, and he was very instrumental in leading San Lorenzo to a Copa Libertadores title. So that will be a factor. I really do believe that they need to tap into that experience and take advantage of it.
Yeah, they brought in young talent, but they also brought in young talent that knows how to win and knows how to play in pressure-packed situations. We'll see how that comes off on Sunday. Felipe, thanks for the time. We'll catch up early next week before the second leg at Red Bull Arena.
All right, man. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Felipe. We're going to take a quick break, come back and wrap up hour number 1 after this.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, Five Stripe Friday preview edition of Atlanta and New York. Hour number 2, we'll have Doug Roberson from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We'll dig into some of the tactics to look for in leg 1 and get you set for what will be a special day at the Benz on Sunday. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick one, reset for hour number 2. We'll be right back.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath.
He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties.
He knows he's a pretty big deal. Look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug, Instagram star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, 5 Stripe Friday edition on a Black Friday, November 23rd. Hopefully you're not fighting people at malls to try to get some special deal. Don't do that. Please don't do that. None of that, please. One thing you guys need to keep in mind, though, for Sunday, those of you who will be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, get into your seats early. Get in early, do what you got to do, take care of your business, grab your drinks, grab your snacks, grab your food, leave the tailgate a little early, leave extra time for security, all of these things. But this is your official public service announcement. Get into your seats about 15 minutes earlier than normal is what most are saying. Club level, lower level, everybody, be in your seat by the time the players walk out of the tunnel. And that will be roughly at 5 o'clock, like right at the hour mark. That's usually when it happens. This is coming from all the supporters groups. I don't know what they have planned. I'm assuming it's something kind of cool, and I'm assuming they're going to need everybody's help in the lower level. So get in early, get ready, and be ready to provide a special atmosphere for Atlanta United, because this game, you're not... it's something we've talked about this week. You're not going to win the series here. You win 3-0, the series isn't over here. But if you lose 3-0 and you have to go on the road in the second leg, you're in a lot of trouble. You can't win the series on Sunday. You can lose it. I've been digging into the Red Bulls a little bit since Jesse Marsch took over. Or since Marsch took over, but more importantly, since Chris Armas took over from Marsch this season. Since Marsch took over in the playoffs, last year, they won their knockout round game on the road in Chicago. They lost the first leg of the conference semifinals at home to Toronto, but then went to Toronto in the second leg, got a 1-0 win, not enough to go through because they had allowed 2 away goals to Toronto in the first leg. But they won 2 games on the playoffs in the road in 2017. 2016, they lost to Montreal in the conference semifinals. They lost 1-0 at Montreal. They lost 2-1 at Red Bull Arena. They were out in their first round. 2015, they got through DC United in the conference semifinal. 1-0 win at RFK. 1-0 win at Red Bull Arena. They go into the next round against Columbus. They lose 2-0 in the first leg on the road at Mopfre Stadium. 1-0 in the second leg. Not enough. Columbus went on to MLS Cup in 2015. That's the playoff history since the pressing Jesse Marsch Red Bull soccer style came into play. They've also played in 2-leg series against CONCACAF Champions League teams. 2017, they lost on the road in the second leg to Vancouver, knocked them out after a 1-1 draw at Red Bull Arena. 2018 CONCACAF Champions League, we know how good of a season it was in CONCACAF. They got all the way to the semifinals where they lost to Chivas. They lost that first leg on the road, 1-0. Scoreless draw in the second leg at Red Bull Arena. Previous rounds, they got results on the road. They won 2-0 in Tijuana. They drew 1-1 against Olympia. This is a club that since 2015, when they really implemented their style of play, they have gone on the road and gotten results more often than not in these 2-leg series. This is a club that is not afraid of coming into Mercedes-Benz Stadium and taking care of what they need to take care of here. That's key. That's really, really important to keep in mind. As we talked about with Felipe, you have Atlanta United players who have been in these situations before, but Atlanta United has been in 1 2-leg series in its history, and it was a very, very good one. But that's it. The Red Bulls as a group have more of that collective history to rely on, John.
Yeah. And to the point that you made, you can lose it in the first leg. you can't necessarily win it. And I know that we're kind of hanging on to our predictions for another 40 plus minutes or so. And that has played into a lot of my thinking when it comes to what I would anticipate when it comes to approach and personnel. And I have no earthly idea how many different permutations of an 11 I've had in my brain and going through all of the if-thens, but you want that first 20 to 25 minutes to go the way that you want. You want that first quarter of the match on Sunday to go in your direction. And in the back of your mind, you're trying to play with that aura that I talked about with Felipe, but at the same time, you don't want to make any misstep that would create an early hole. And with the Red Bulls history, I know that that's there on a piece of paper, and it is history and it is tendency. So there's a lot of stuff to play with. Obviously, Atlanta United, with what they did against NYCFC, they can take those lessons learned and go forward with it, but you're going up against a very formidable opponent in more ways than one, not just from this year.
Jarrett, how much does it worry you that the Red Bulls, and this core has been together for a good while, since they really implemented this pressing system in 2015 when Jesse Marsch took over and Red Bull Soccer started to have the team play a certain way. How much does it worry you that they have been in so many different situations like this, so many different two-leg series where they have to go on the road in the first leg? How much does that experience worry you?
Not as much as it would if Atlanta didn't have a slew of players that have played in some, let's call them hostile environments and high-leverage games. I think if I didn't have guys like an Almiron, LGP, Tito, those kind of guys, along with your MLS veterans, I think I'd be a lot more nervous. And I'm still, there's still nerves about it. Don't get me wrong. You're not sitting here saying, we're just going to brush Red Bulls aside. It's not that. It's, you've got guys who have dealt with the high leverage situations, both on the road in, let's be honest. And here's the thing. Red Bulls as a team, they deserve a lot better than what they get in terms of attendance. But Red Bull Arena ain't a thing compared to some of the stadiums these guys have played in terms of atmosphere, in terms of hostility, in terms of chaos. I think Atlanta's in decent shape here, especially after what happened with New York City, in the sense of, people don't go to New York and get results, much less wins. I mean, you've already flipped the script once this postseason with the way you were willing to make changes. I am a little bullish on them being able to do it again with the guys that have proven that they've played in those situations with pressure, especially a guy, honestly, like LGP, who really, was on the tough end of some stuff. He's seen the bottom of the barrel before, and I think that helps.
Yeah, it's a little different battling relegation as opposed to the first leg of a playoff to win something. It's a little bit different mentality and can affect you differently. But, John, Jarrett cites LGP as a key here. Who else are you looking at as an important player to set that tone for Atlanta in the first leg?
Considering that he took my answer, I look at a Miguel Almiron. I wonder how tired he will be and how well he will have recovered. I know he's going to want to play, but I want to look at the folks who've come across. I want to look at a Joseph. I want to look at a Miguel. I want to look at an Escobar. I want to look at a Brad Guzan from what he's done in international competition. So a lot of my guys seem to be, and a Greg Garza. I'm looking more defensively. I'm looking at it more from the back going forward. So that was, in addition to LGP, those are the guys that I was looking at.
Shiva asks an interesting question. If you were to pick a team that deserves the cup more based on coaching and style of play, who would it be? I mean, it comes down to personal preference. Like, I'm a fan of the game that enjoys attacking, creative soccer. So I'm going to lean more to the way Atlanta plays. I thought it was a really interesting piece over at Sports Illustrated in their Planet Football series where Paul Carr, who used to work with ESPN, dug deep into the tendencies of each of the teams. And you have 4 teams that are on just completely opposite ends of the spectrum and approach the game in completely different ways. You know, Atlanta and New York is maybe the most complete opposite you can possibly be, where you have the Red Bulls who don't have much possession in terms of possession in a match or just the length of their possessions when they have the ball, and a team who starts more attacks in the opponent's final third, or the opponent's defensive third, in New York's final third, than any other team in the league. Atlanta's the exact opposite. They have the ball for long stretches of time, both overall in the 90 minutes, and in each possession they string together passes for a longer period of time, and they build up attacks from deeper positions. They create their chances from deeper positions. Completely opposite. So that's the thing about the game. I don't think there's one that is the right way and the wrong way. There are ways that you like and ways that maybe you don't like. I think there are fans who really enjoy the frenetic, high-pace, destructive style of the New York Red Bulls. They're fans who enjoy that style of soccer. You look at teams that take different twists on it. You see teams that take Atlanta's style and do it a little differently. There's teams that take New York style and do it a little differently. So I don't think there's a deserved right or wrong here. I think style of play, personally, on the eyes, to me, Atlanta's a more just appealing style of play. Doesn't mean it's right and doesn't mean they deserve the cup more than a New York Red Bulls team that probably buys into their style and commits to their style more than anybody in the league. And that's what's impressive about the work that Jesse Marsch did before leaving and the work that Chris Armas has done, where you look at the numbers over his time in charge, and it feels like Chris Armas has made the tweaks and doubled down on some aspects that he commits this team to, and they embody that identity. They have a true identity for how the New York Red Bulls play, and they don't really deviate from it, Jared.
No, they don't. And it's one of those things where I think you kind of look at them and say, which one do you feel better about? It's like, well, I mean, I get kind of not aggravated, just flustered with New York in the sense of the high press and we're just going to foul and bring this game to a halt. It's not my thing, but right. But they're good.
It's not Ivy's thing either.
Yeah, they're good at what they do and they embrace it, so that's always dangerous.
Jared's playing clips of Ivy yelling at the TV at a New York Red Bulls game.
No kidding.
No, legitimately the best thing that ever happened was during the Toronto game, during the third goal, and she just goes to the TV and screams, "No!" So that's about how she feels about this one.
Nice. Chewy with a good question, John, before we go to break. How is it possible that the New York Red Bulls have had less yellow cards than Atlanta in the postseason? That doesn't even begin to make sense. Half our starters can sit out the second leg with a yellow. It happens with different referees.
Yeah.
Anibal rolled on, throws the Geiger hashtag comment out there, and I don't think it was Geiger. I think the yellows that were given to Atlanta in the second leg against NYC were fine. I didn't have a problem with them. The yellows in the first leg I had more of an issue with, and specifically from the Tito Villalba one and
the Tito yellow, definitely.
One. The issue, it's not so much that Atlanta picked up yellows. It's that the Red Bulls and their style and how at times cynical it can be did not pick up yellows. That's where I have more of an issue here. We'll see how this series goes because you can't control what happened previously. You had different referees calling different games, and they see it differently. You have Kevin Stott and you have Jair Marufo in this. Stott called a fairly tight game in the first leg for Atlanta and NYC. Threw a lot of yellows. Probably should have thrown some more on the NYC side. Probably should have held the one on Villalba. Felt inconsistent. Marufo in the second leg, he's a guy who doesn't like to call a lot. He's a guy who wants to let the game breathe and wants to let it play out. Go back and watch Seattle-Portland, which I thought was one of the best MLS refereeing performances I've ever seen. He let that game and let the players decide it. How important do you think the yellow card situation is going to be in the series?
Oh, well, I'm looking straight at Remedi when you're looking at the yellow situation. I mean, with Miles, yeah, okay. Joseph, yeah, I mean, obviously Joseph might be a 1B or a 2, but I'm looking at Remedi when it comes to the yellow card because of what he has been able to become for Atlanta United in the middle. So underline, exclamate, italicize Eric Remedi, A1, spot shadow. That's where I'm looking as my number one focus for yellows.
Yeah, that's the one that is probably the most likely to be in a situation where he could pick up a yellow. Escobar would be right there as well. It's something to keep an eye on going into the first leg, because if you're missing those guys on Thursday at Red Bull Arena, that does change things dramatically. You have depth, you have pieces who can fill those spots, but those are two players who I think were critical in the win over NYC, and you're going to have to potentially deal with their absence in the second leg if they pick up a yellow in the first leg at Mercedes-Benz. We're going to take a break, come back, more tactical talk about Atlanta and New York after this.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here. November 23rd edition, 2 days away from Atlanta and the New York Red Bulls, leg 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Portland and Sporting Kansas City will meet in leg 1 of the Western Conference Finals on Sunday as well, and in the second legs will both be on Thursday. The Atlanta match on Thursday has been pushed back to a 7:30 kick as opposed to a 7 o'clock kick. The club is organizing a rather large viewing party at Atlantic Station, if you are so inclined, as well as all of the different bars and pubs and restaurants that will be having viewing parties all over the city for this. It's going to be an epic week in Atlanta United land, and we'll be here to cover all of it for you. Let's get into a little bit of tactics, though, guys, before we have Doug Roberson join us at 11:30. Looking back at the time since Chris Armas took over the New York Red Bulls, and his first match was a 1-0 loss at Yankee Stadium against NYCFC. You can see where things changed a little bit for the Red Bulls under Armas. you've watched the number of chances that they are creating dramatically dip since late August, but you've seen the number of chances they're conceding dip a little bit, but be very consistent. I think this team has kind of doubled down a little bit on what it does well in terms of their press. We've seen Tyler Adams be a pressing problem solver for them, where he will move around into different spots based on what is needed defensively. Last week, it was a little different than what we saw last year with Tyler Adams, where Adams played as a number 10 in that second leg at BMO Field against Toronto to try to stifle Michael Bradley. And he did that to a degree. The problem was you needed more goals because you were down 2-1 coming into it, with Toronto scoring 2 on the road. You only got 1. You didn't get enough. You didn't get through. Last week, Federico Higuaín was shut down, not just because of Tyler Adams, because Adams was actually pushed forward. The play looked more like a 4-1-4-1 as opposed to the 4-2-3-1 that the Red Bulls generally play. Again, it's a very subtle difference. Don't get too worked up about, it's a whole different formation. No, it's just Tyler Adams pushing forward a little bit more. But what it did was, in some ways, similar to what they did against Toronto. Columbus, Will Trapp, Artur are the two who set the tone for them in terms of building possession. Tyler Adams pushed up higher in that 4-1-4-1 setup, really made it 2-on-2 against Trapp and Artur. They weren't able to do very much, and it cut off the supply line to Higuaín. So they didn't mark Higuaín completely out of the game. They actually wasn't really a man-marking situation at all. They kind of passed him off to different spots as he moved around trying to find the game. Very similar to what Atlanta did to Maxi Morales. But they cut off the supply line to Higuaín, and that was where the Red Bulls kind of stifled that game and made it difficult for Columbus to do what they do. The most interesting number for me when it comes to the Red Bulls is 50% possession. Under Chris Armas, when they have had more than 50% possession, they are 2-2-2. When they've had less than 50% of the possession, they are 11-2-1. Don't think that's an accident, folks. This is a team that honestly creates their chances by not having the ball. And that sounds counterintuitive, but when you dig into those numbers that Planet Football tweeted this week, John, this is a team that doesn't create long strings of possession. They don't start their possessions in their own half. This is a team that starts their possessions in the opponent's defensive third and goes to goal incredibly fast. That means they can't have possession. They can't have that time on the ball to create their best chances.
And for me, that was why when we were discussing what we were thinking would be something of a game plan, it's pretty much for me, find ways to send it into their defensive third, force them to possess, and work out of the back. And for me, I'm looking at the 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whatever you want to call it. Work your way, push your way through the press, Gressel as a right wing back, and force the Red Bulls to work from the back. That was, for me, we've always thought that Red Bulls thought that the soccer ball had cooties, and they didn't want to touch it until they absolutely had to. And with their press, it's creating a short field for them to work offensively, get things done, shoot, score, done, boom. And then time of possession is limited. So for me, that was what I was thinking and trying to process all of this information through. It's like, okay, you don't want to possess? Okay, so possess the ball and then try to figure things out. And Atlanta United hopefully tries to do the same thing, where as Red Bulls are trying to work their way through the back, then Atlanta United works things defensively, creates short fields and opportunities and scoring chances there.
But, Jarrett, this is where it's tricky because Atlanta has to score goals. In the home leg, yes. Atlanta has to score some goals. So how do you do that? A couple numbers on Atlanta to keep in mind here. Atlanta scored more goals than anybody in the league this season with 70. They also, according to expected goals, left the second most differential between their goal scoring total and their expected goal total on the table. they had more chances to score even more goals, which is crazy to think of, that the highest scoring team was one of the least efficient teams in scoring. That efficiency comes into play because the Red Bulls have not allowed more than 12 chances in a match under Chris Armas. That's low. They haven't allowed more than 12. They haven't allowed... you're looking at their past couple matches. They allowed 10 to Columbus in the second leg, and probably some of those are after you had a lead and had the game sealed. They allowed 6 to Columbus in the first leg. Columbus got 1 goal. They allowed 6 to Orlando. They allowed 8 to San Jose in their win out on the road in San Jose. They allowed 11 to Philadelphia, which was a lot for them. They allowed 9 to Atlanta in the win at Red Bull Arena. So we can take this to mean that Atlanta won't have a ton of chances, won't have as many chances as they generally create. However, they have to be very efficient. Efficiency is something the Red Bulls thrive on. Their last 4 games, they've had 8 chances, 5 chances, 7 chances, and 6 chances, and they're 3-1. And they've had 3 clean sheets in that. How important, and this is something that's come up a lot in 2 years with Atlanta, how important is it for Atlanta to take advantage of the chances that they get? Because you can't really expect to have as many as you usually get here.
Yeah, you're gonna have to be efficient, and you weren't efficient in New York where you had 2 1v1s and you missed both of them. You've had a couple in New York against New York City where you were in really good shape, and it just seems like the break just the gears on the clock were not synced up properly, and so things didn't break properly. But I'll be fascinated to see, kind of how they decide to attack. Because I know is it a tragedy to go to New York 0-0? I mean, I know you want to win that first leg, but go keep that clean sheet more than anything. And if you find goals, you have to take them. And it's not good to draw at home, but for God's sakes, keep the clean sheet, if nothing else. The thing, I guess, for me with Atlanta is, despite last year being a team that would run teams out of the building, this year, we've gone over this numerous times till we are blue in the face, Atlanta's a team that scores late. They like to score late. They like to leave it. And they like to bury you on the last stretch. They are a runner, running a 4,000 meter who kicks at the last 400. And I think that could be the difference in this game this weekend, is that I think Atlanta can kind of just harass the Red Bulls, play a solid game, and try and keep that clean sheet. I think Atlanta is, given what we've seen from this year, I think they're a team that can find that late goal to carry the advantage into New York, just because of how lethal they have been late in games. Even in games they didn't win. You go look at, for instance, the Seattle game in Mercedes-Benz this year, where Atlanta just was all around the box, just couldn't find the finishing blow. They're a team that'll create late. I think that could be the difference Sunday.
And the Red Bulls are a team who have only created more than 8 chances in 2 games since August 22nd. This is not a team that's going to light you up from an attacking perspective. You have to limit their big chances. You have to limit their set-piece chances, because that's where they truly thrive. But the Red Bulls are not a team that's going to blow you out here unless you let them. And that's the most important thing for me from the Atlanta perspective here, is you have to maintain control of the match, and you have to take advantage of the few opportunities you're going to get. You have to be on point here, because you're not going to see many chances. But the saving grace, and as you said, going to the second leg 0-0 is not the end of the world, because this is a Red Bulls team that, you look back at the chances they've created in some of these games. It's 8, it's 5, it's 7, it's 6, it's 7, it's 8, it's 5, it's 5. You're not creating very many. The thing is, Bradley Wright Phillips doesn't need very many to score goals. Daniel Royer doesn't need very many. You have to limit their chances from a dead ball situation, but you also have to maximize your opportunities when you get them. Think back to the game at Red Bull Arena. If Miguel Almiron scores that goal in the 10th minute, completely different match. Completely different match. Chris Armas has, in my mind, kind of doubled down on the pressing style and just making it difficult for teams to breathe. And if a chance comes out of that, great. But first priority is making your life miserable. That's the goal here. Atlanta's first priority has been to create chances and to create goals. So you have two teams coming in with absolutely opposite approaches to it. How does Atlanta deal with New York's approach? How does New York deal with Atlanta's approach? That's going to be the key tactical battle here on Sunday. We're going to take a break, get Doug Roberson from the AJC on the line, get his input, and we'll make our predictions in the next segment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath.
He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties.
He knows he's a pretty big deal. Look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug, Instagram star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, November 23rd editions. We're 2 days away from Atlanta and the Red Bulls kicking off the Eastern Conference Finals. Doug Roberson of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution joining us now. How's it going, Doug?
It's fine. How are y'all?
Doing well. Training today, player availability, Tata Martino availability. Was there anything that stood out to you that had some alarm bells going off? Anything said, any kind of vibe, anything that happened today that you took notice of?
No, really the only thing that kind of raised my antenna just a little tiny bit was, so today is the first day back in training for Almiron, Vijaba, and Martinez after their international duty with Venezuela and Paraguay. And we had asked if he had received any kind of scouting reports or any information about Red Bulls that he could go over while he was off with the U.S. and England and Belgium, from where he did not bring me back any chocolates. And he said, yeah, he had been speaking with his goalkeeper coach and talking with some teammates and stuff about Red Bulls. And then I asked Almiron the same question, and he said no, he was exclusively focused on Paraguay. Now, that doesn't mean that he knows what Red Bulls, doesn't already know what Red Bulls are going to do and all that, but I just thought that was a little bit odd that he had done not any self-scouting or not received anything from the team about Red Bulls when there's only going to be basically 2 training sessions before a pivotal game. So not really a criticism or a complaint, just more of a little bit curious, kind of an observation.
So, Doug, when you look at the overall vibe of those who did not go to international duty and come back, what's been the overall vibe of the guys that you've been able to interact with in the in-betweens from the end of the NYCFC series to now? Is it still just, we're going to say the right things, we're going to do this, it's just going to be taking care of business, and we're just out there to do our thing and not be enthralled or just wrapped up in all of our surroundings pretty much?
No, I mean, I think that it's taken probably a lot longer than it should have, but they finally realized, these type of games require a certain level of aggression and intensity that they haven't displayed, and that it's okay to win ugly. I've heard that a few times. They don't have to put the prettiest sequence of passes together as long as they can score, and then just play for each other on defense. That's been kind of the vibe. So I'm going to be curious. You'll be able to tell within the first 10 or 15 minutes on Sunday if that lesson that they applied in both legs against NYCFC has kind of taken for this pivotal Red Bull series.
What do you think of the job Chris Armas has done after taking over for Jesse Marsh back in July? Kind of a tough situation to walk into, and he loses the first match to NYC, but since then has been very successful with the Red Bulls and completed the Supporter Shield winning season. What do you think of Armas?
I think he's done a fantastic job. That was almost a no-win situation for him. If the team started to falter, he was going to receive all the blame. If the team kept winning, then it was just going to be, that's Jesse Marsh's system and everybody knows what's going on. And so he's just kind of a caretaker. But instead, he kind of went the other way and tweaked the system to his own liking, kind of made them what I think most people assume is going to be a better team in the playoffs than they have been, because they're not all about attack, and leave themselves exposed. They are a little more patient, a little more disciplined in their formation than they have been. And it didn't work as well for them in that first game against Columbus, but it worked very, very well in that second game. So could he replicate this if he were to go to, I'm not saying he's leaving by any stretch, but if you were to put him with San Jose or with Colorado or with Orlando, could he have done the same thing? I'm not sure that he could, but I think he deserves a ton of credit for what he's done with Red Bulls.
But what we've seen in the quotes to the media is we're not talked about, no one's talking about us, and seemingly wanting to just kind of put all of everything that they've accomplished to the side. And it's been an odd vibe with Chris when he's been talking about the success and the perception of it and the whole underdog versus favorite thing. What's been your grab from how Red Bulls are perceiving themselves when it comes to this whole weekend?
It's that old stupid disrespect crap that Miami made famous in college football, and that
quote the Canes. I love it.
Perpetuated sports for way, way too long. I don't know how he thinks anyone is disrespecting them or not giving them their due. They set a league record for points. They won the Supporter Shield. No one's saying they don't have a chance against Atlanta United. I think if anything, they're the favorites. Atlanta United is yet to beat them. So I think he's just trying to find something to get his players, motivated, focused. He knows his players a lot better than I do.
But at this point, do you need that kind of motivation, though? I mean, I would think that with everything you've accomplished, if you're Chris Armas, you should be playing up the fact that, yes, we've done this. We're the number one. We set a points record instead of trying to do the opposite.
Well, I think that is what he's doing in a way. When he's saying that we don't get enough respect, well, why don't they when they've done all of this? That's the end of that sentence or thought. They're a great team. They're a fantastic team. They are arguably, everyone holds up Atlanta United as the next iteration of MLS, I think Red Bulls is probably the model that most MLS teams should follow. Cheap on the payroll, very good player development, very good scouting with the people they sign and how they produce. That's what the Nashvilles and the Cincinnatis should be gunning for, not the Atlanta United.
Okay, let's go into some of the specifics here with Atlanta and New York. How important? What's more important to you, Doug? That Atlanta scores in leg one, or that they don't concede?
Well, okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. Scores just one goal or scores however many goals?
Scores, period. What's more important, if Atlanta puts a goal on the board or if they give up an away goal? Like how?
I would say they need – you always want to go into the second leg with an advantage. It's much easier to defend than to chase. So I think it's more important that Atlanta United scores and leaves Mercedes-Benz with at least a 1-0 lead.
Okay.
As opposed to a 2-1 lead.
Right. So then follow-up would be, who's going to be the most important player for Atlanta in that scenario to protect them defensively? You don't want to get overexposed and give up a bunch of away goals here, but to still maintain that attacking edge. Who's going to be the one who will carry Atlanta to that type of performance in your mind?
Well, I mean, the obvious is Almiron, but I think it's got to be Nagbe. Red Bulls are going to come out as they typically do, and they're going to go really hard, really fast for a really short period of time. Nagbe has got to be that outlet. He has got to control the game, either by winning fouls or by putting teammates into space to relieve the pressure. If he gets bottled up quickly and has a couple of turnovers, then Atlanta United could be in a little bit of trouble. I don't think that will happen, but it was your question.
No, that's a great shout because, I think Miguel is the obvious answer, but with him coming off of international duty, I don't know if he can do it by himself. And I agree. I think Nagbe is the kind of guy who has to make that step up to be able to maintain both because, in a perfect world, you win 2-0, 3-0, and you don't give up an away goal and you get multiple goals. But as we know in the postseason, that's very unlikely. So you have to maintain that attacking threat.
Yeah, I thought Nagbe did that really well against NYCFC. Also, by the way, he was getting forward more than I can remember in recent games. Of course, he hasn't been back too long. But really, there's one other game this season. I think it was Galaxy. He was really getting forward a lot. He was doing that against NYCFC better than probably that Galaxy game.
John, final question from you before we get to the predictions.
Okay. Final question for me. All right, you've talked about Nagbe. You've talked about Almiron. Give me a third guy that you're going to have your eyes focused on for the success that you would anticipate for Atlanta United to have a successful first leg. Give me somebody else from the back.
Oh, from the defense?
Yes.
Oh, Gressel, he even admitted this, probably lost that battle with Kamar Lawrence in Harrison in their most recent meeting. His touch wasn't good. His passes weren't great. He's got to be a more, to me, of an offensive threat than he was in that first game because you got to keep those Red Bulls fullbacks respectful of the offensive threat coming at them. And Gressel, it was just an off day for him in Harrison. So I think he's got to be able to complete a couple of passes and have a good touch on Sunday.
All right, let's get into some predictions. If you couldn't tell, Ivy Board was a little riled up, so Jarrett had to step away. He did leave us with a 1-0 Atlanta win during the break. That's his prediction. I'll go ahead and give mine because it's the same, and I think it's going to be very tight, very few chances either way. I think Atlanta finds one, and I think it's still filled with drama going into Thursday on the road. John, what about you?
You're stealing my answers again. I think it's going to be a tight, edgy 1-0 Atlanta United win, and that turns all of the drama to Harrison on Thursday. So I'll go 1-0 Atlanta United.
So everybody's going 1-0. Doug, are you going to go with chalk, or are you going to go against the grain?
I think it'll be 2-1 Atlanta United. Tim Parker is a fantastic defender, but to me, he just switches off too many times in a game, and I think Martinez is going to take advantage of that to sneak one goal for Atlanta United. I think Red Bulls will tie it, and then I think Atlanta United will get another goal at some point second half. I think the Red Bulls goal is going to be one that's just going to be very, very frustrating because that's the kind of goals that Atlanta United tends to give up. So, yeah, 2-1 Atlanta United.
All right. What else is coming up from you at the AJC between now and kickoff on Sunday?
Well, I posted a story about what Gerardo Martino got for his birthday on Tuesday, which was a pretty cool little gift. And then I posted something on the fact that Martinez, Vijaba, and Almiron returned to training today. Guzan returned yesterday. And then I'm going to have something for Sunday's print. I just don't know what. Been a long 2 weeks. I'm trying to come up with something new that I can write. So I'm going to go listen to tape and figure it out here at my in-laws' house.
Very cool. And we'll have a Southern Fried Soccer after the match podcast that'll go out over from the AJC platform. Myself, maybe we can grab Mike or somebody else to sit down as well if Mike hasn't left to get out of the line of fire. We usually get Mike on the road, so maybe we can capture him for this one. Let me get your thoughts real quick. You mentioned the 2 weeks, and this has come up a couple of times about the playoff format and the momentum issues with this 2-week break. What do you think of the report about the proposed changes to the MLS playoff format?
Yeah. I don't like the playoff format now. I don't think a 2-leg series is an advantage to the home team, or to the higher seeded team, right, I should say. I would either like to see it, actually, this will be weird, go 3 legs with 2 at home, or 1 leg with the higher seed at home. And I think it was Mexico that did the thing where the higher seed doesn't even have to win. All they have to do is get a draw. So if MLS is considering that and shortening the season to be done by the beginning of November or end of October, I think that is a fantastic idea. I don't know if I like shortening the number of games in the regular season. I think that they could probably figure out ways to make that work, even if they have to do a little unbalanced scheduling, like Atlanta United do a Portland-Seattle on a Wednesday-Friday kind of thing. Cincinnati-Columbus, 2 games in a week kind of a thing. As long as everybody has to do it, I think that would be perfect. What do you think?
Yeah, it's. I don't think they're talking about shortening the number of games yet, but they're definitely, the talk is shortening the calendar side of it, more midweek games. So, yeah, I think that could be part of it. Is you think about, okay, Wednesday, Saturday, you're on the West Coast and you stay out west, kind of like you had this year with Colorado and then San Jose, something like that.
Right.
You could see that. I think you're going to see more midweek games, period, and that's going to be a challenge for some markets and not really much of an effect on others. I don't like 3 games. Single game does give you more of a higher seed getting an advantage because, the 2-leg series is built to take away, really, advantage. That's why it works in Champions League, because you don't really have seeding exactly the same way. But I'm glad you mentioned the Mexico format, because if you stay with 2 legs, that would be what I would introduce to make the regular season more important. If it's level at the end of the 180 minutes, the higher seed advances, flat out. That's it. And in a two-leg series, and you want to maintain the regular season being important, that's exactly how you do it. So it sounds like, though, MLS is going away from that and wants to go single game period across the board in the postseason, higher seed hosts, which would give more importance to the regular season. That's for sure.
Yeah, I just don't understand the point of playing from March till the end of October, and then the higher seed, just you get a bye, but so what? You still got to play 3 days later.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, that's the part I don't like about it, is that, that's why I like 2 legs, but I agree. I think if you're going to do 2 legs, you go to the higher seed having the tiebreak. That way you find, I think, the middle ground that makes sense for everything. Because if you're the number 2 seed in the format that is proposed and has been discussed, if you're the number 2 seed, you miss out by 2 points with the second best record in MLS history. Your season comes down to 1 game against the number 7 seed that you could be done. And that would seem to minimize the regular season in some ways. So it's something MLS has to figure out and get right. I think it's a very important decision that they're about to make. So we'll see when the Board of Governors stuff starts to hit right after MLS Cup. It's going to be an interesting offseason on a number of fronts for all of us who cover the league. Doug, thanks for the time. We'll see you on Sunday.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back to wrap up the show after this.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Appolinsky & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Appolinsky at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Appolinsky is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Final segment of the week for Soccer Down Here. Getting ready for Atlanta and the Red Bulls on Sunday. Get into your seats early. Be there ahead of 5 o'clock. Be there before the teams come out of the tunnel. Be there, and be ready for it. Atmosphere will be very important here. It will be critical, as we talked about with the NYC series. This is where a guy like Miguel Almiron needs that lift because he's going to hit a wall at some point in the match. You just played on halfway around the world and flew around the world totally there and back. It's not easy, and everybody will hit that wall. Tyler Adams is going to hit that wall. Aaron Long will hit that wall. Joseph Martinez will hit that wall. Joseph and Miguel will feed off of the crowd at Mercedes-Benz. So being ready, being amped, being loud, being consistently loud, all these things are going to be very, very, very important on Sunday, as well as finding goals. and finding a way to limit the opportunities for the Red Bulls to get one. It's going to be a fascinating tactical matchup between Tata Martino and Chris Armas. I want to see who deviates from what they do and who doubles down on what they do. It's going to be very, very interesting. Before we go, report just hit from Yahoo Sports, Doug McIntyre, his 23 Thoughts column, which is excellent and a must-read every week. McIntyre reports that Oscar Pareja was interviewed by the United States Soccer Federation for the vacant head coaching position. Formally interviewed, this was after talk first emerged about Pareja as a candidate, but he has been interviewed. 4 finalists were identified by Ernie Stewart, according to Doug McIntyre. He doesn't know who the other 2 are. He's told that one was an international candidate from outside of Major League Soccer. Looking at Berhalter, reportedly they are finalizing an agreement between Greg Berhalter and the United States Soccer Federation. Nothing has been signed. The hiring could be announced late next week if everything goes according to plan. And Berhalter will be introduced during a press conference in New York City early December. Berhalter has some leverage, though, and McIntyre points this out. The interest from the LA Galaxy we've talked about. He could sign an extension and stay in Columbus under new ownership, which it looks like that new ownership of the Columbus Crew would be paying $150 million, according to Forbes, to do that. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Berhalter could agree to go to Austin. I don't think he wants to sit on the sidelines for 2 years, but anything's possible at this point. I think the most likely, if he doesn't take the men's national team job, is to go to the Galaxy. But don't rule Columbus completely out of it. This is interesting that Pareja did get an interview sometime after late September when Pareja said he hadn't been interviewed for the job, and now. He's not available at this point. He's moved on. It looks like, anyway. It looks like he's going to Tijuana. That has not been officially announced, but there is a report, though, and this is something to keep in mind, although this would be crazy if it happened this quickly. There's reports that Pareja has a clause in his contract in Tijuana, a release clause, if he is offered the U.S. men's national team job. So, John, let's try to take stock of all this. Pareja was interviewed, not offered the job. He's moving on to another job, but he has a release clause that if he is offered the men's national team job, he can leave Tijuana. I'm going to take that as saying that the interview went well, but not well enough to hire him now, but well enough that Pareja thinks he could be a candidate down the road, or well enough that if things fall apart with Greg Berhalter, there's no one else to turn to.
Yeah, I was going with option number 2 there, where we're looking at Pareja. It's like Pareja has an out. And so the first thing that popped into my head is, okay, well, if things aren't going the way that Ernie Stewart was thinking they were going to with the discussions with Berhalter, then the break glass option would be Oscar Pareja in this situation. And that was how I was looking at all of those pieces of information that we got.
A couple other things from McIntyre's column, and go check it out over at sports.yahoo.com. Very important points about Jay Berhalter, the chief commercial officer for U.S. Soccer, and who could become the CEO for the organization when Dan Flynn officially leaves. U.S. Soccer is going to have to make it clear that Jay Berhalter did not have any say in the decision to hire his brother. Let's keep a couple things in mind. The optics are bad. It doesn't look good. And you're going to have to explain this. But Greg Berhalter was going to be a candidate no matter if Jay Berhalter was on the U.S. Soccer payroll or not. Greg Berhalter, as a former player, as a guy who's had success in MLS, he was going to be considered. He was going to be a leading candidate, period. as McIntyre points out, the bigger issue is going to be Jay Berhalter's involvement in the decision to hire Ernie Stewart as the GM, who would then be making the decision to hire the manager. Ernie Stewart was an obvious candidate. You didn't have to have Jay Berhalter involved in that. So that's the tricky one. I'm not going to subscribe to a black helicopter theory here, but it is an issue for U.S. soccer to deal with from a public perception standpoint.
Yeah, the optics are going to be the largest stumbling block in all of this, because you know that you're going to have a lot of folks who are going to sit there and see Berhalter in place, Berhalter in play creates two Berhalters in place. So that math is always going to be there.
McIntyre also talks about the playoff format, midweek matches, gets into a little bit with Atlanta and Red Bulls and Portland and Kansas City. I disagree with him saying that Atlanta had a late season swoon. I think it might have been a hiccup in a week where Tata Martino was announced as leaving and a bad loss in Toronto. You went, 5. We won 5 of your last 7. I'm not going to say late season swoon. Couple quotes, and Brad Gazan said ahead of the U.S.-England match in London, told McIntyre, "We had a chat among ourselves. We know we're a good team football-wise, but we agreed that we needed to show some fight and competitiveness and desire to win. We set the tone early in that first leg against NYC in terms of challenging for second balls, which was something we were missing in that Toronto game." He also said, "We were nowhere near best in that game," talking about the last match at Red Bull Arena. "With the first game in Atlanta, it's important that we get off to a good start." And that's the key. That's the key on Sunday, is getting out of the gates, converting your chances, because there will be a few. There won't be a lot, but there will be a few. Miguel Almiron, Joseph Martinez, if it's Tito Villalba, if it's Ezequiel Barco, if it's Julian Gressel, if it's Darlington Nagbe, if it's on a set piece and it's a Leandro Gonzalez-Perez or a Jeff Lorenowitz or a Greg Garza following up or a Franco Escobar, you have to convert on those chances, because New York does an amazing job of limiting those opportunities for you. And Atlanta at times has been wasteful in converting chances this season. Can't do that in this series because New York will make that difficult. It's one of those matchups, John, as we finish up, that it feels like it's going to be decided on special moments. You think to those moments that swing a match or swing a series. That's what's going to decide this here. If you have an early chance like you did at Red Bull Arena and Luis Robles makes a big save, that's going to give the Red Bulls a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence. If Atlanta gets that early goal, you're going to have a crowd that goes nuts, and you're going to have a lot of momentum go Atlanta's way. It feels like those types of moments, however they emerge in this match, are going to decide it.
Yeah, for me, it's something of a set piece. It's a big save. It's a golazo. It's a breakaway, something off of transition. And whichever way that swings it early on, then I think, let's just say something happens early that goes against Atlanta United. I think that to remind the crowd who's going to be there not to sit on their hands, do not be anxious, because that anxiousness is translated onto the pitch. Be as vocal in a negative as you are in a positive, if not even more so. And this is where that intangible of 72,000 people can really help you push through something, whether it's a positive or a negative. So we can't emphasize this enough. Be there, be loud, be rowdy, be that 12th man, or whatever you want to phrase it as. Be that other element that pushes Atlanta United through here in the first leg.
Get to your seats early. If you're in the club seats, if you're on the field level, get up to a seat before the teams come out. It's going to be something special, it sounds like the supporters groups have cooked up. So be ready to participate and contribute to that. We'll be on hand in the Gulch for our tailgate show presented by Appolinsky and Associates, likely around 1:30, 2 o'clock, somewhere in that ballpark. We'll have an official time come out here in a bit on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. All of our usual coverage with everybody on hand, and then I'll be on board with the Southern Fried Soccer after the match. Rick and John from the midday show at 92.9 The Game will be part of the tailgate festivities as well. So come check all of us out. I'll be jumping on with them at some point during their show as well. Big day on Sunday. Rest up. Get your shopping done today. Get over the turkey hangovers and be ready to go on Sunday, 5 o'clock. It's going to be madness and the most intense soccer environment ever in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back on Monday to break everything down. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha playoffs, y'all.